5:47 in the morning. Marcus Whitfield, a black engineer, pushed through the heavy doors of the Los Angeles port facility. Just another day maintaining the cranes that moved $47 million in cargo. But this morning, everything would change. 7 massive cranes stood frozen, dead. And in the center of the chaos stood Baek Jin-sung, Korean crime lord in a charcoal suit. His empire built on fear, corruption, and weapons hidden inside shipping containers. When Baek saw Marcus, the black engineer who'd built the entire system, he laughed. "You?" Baek's voice dripped with contempt. "They sent me a janitor while my money rots on the docks?" Marcus adjusted his thick glasses, said nothing. "Listen carefully, boy." Baek leaned close. "Fix this by noon, or I'll throw you in the ocean. People like you, they're replaceable. People like you." But what Baek didn't know was that 3 days earlier, Marcus had made a quiet decision. A decision that would bring an entire criminal empire crashing down. Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting threats. It's the one who controls the system. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, justice, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The Port of Los Angeles never sleeps. At exactly 5:47 in the morning, Marcus Whitfield pushed through the heavy metal door of the operations facility, carrying the same worn backpack he'd carried for 12 years. The air smelled of diesel fuel and salt water. Seagulls screamed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a container ship horn bellowed its arrival. Marcus had seen 1,000 mornings like this one. He expected nothing different. He was wrong. The main yard was chaos. Trucks idled in crooked lines. Dock workers shouted in 3 different languages. Supervisors barked into radios. And at the center of it all, towering like steel giants frozen mid-reach, 7 massive gantry cranes stood completely still. Marcus stopped walking. He adjusted his thick-framed glasses and squinted at Crane 7. The status light blinked red. Then Crane 4. Red, Crane 2. Red, all of them. Dead. He'd built the automated system that controlled those cranes. Every line of code, every fail-safe protocol, every backup sequence. And now, for the first time in 6 years of operation, the entire network had gone dark. Marcus felt something strange rise in his chest. Not panic, not confusion, satisfaction. Because 3 days ago, sitting alone in his small apartment in Long Beach, Marcus had made a decision. A quiet decision. The kind of decision that changes everything but announces nothing. He'd received an email. Anonymous. Untraceable. The subject line read only, "You need to see this." Inside were photographs, shipping manifests, payment records, container modification blueprints, and names. So many names. The port wasn't just moving car parts and electronics. It was moving weapons, automatic rifles, ammunition, explosives. All of it hidden inside containers marked as agricultural equipment or industrial machinery. All of it passing through inspection without a second glance. And all of it controlled by one man. Baek Jin-sung. Marcus had heard the name whispered in break rooms. Dock workers looked over their shoulders when they said it. Police turned blind eyes. Union representatives went silent when his black SUVs rolled through the gates. Baek Jin-sung owned this port, not on paper, but in every way that mattered. Marcus had stared at those photographs for hours. He thought about his father, James Whitfield, dead at 41 when a crane collapsed at the port of Oakland. The investigation ruled it mechanical failure, but Marcus knew better. His father had filed 17 safety complaints in the months before he died. 17 warnings about cut corners and bribed inspectors and maintenance schedules ignored to save money. No one listened. And then the crane fell. Marcus closed his laptop that night and made his choice. He wouldn't report Baek Jin-sung to the FBI. He wouldn't send evidence to the police, He wouldn't trust the same systems that had failed his father. He would do something else. He would make the port itself tell the truth. Now, standing in the morning chaos, Marcus walked calmly toward the control room. Workers rushed past him. No one looked at him twice. To them, he was just Marcus. Quiet Marcus. Invisible Marcus. The tech guy who fixed things when they broke. He climbed the metal stairs to the glass-walled control center. Inside, 2 supervisors stood frozen in front of blank monitors. Dozens of screens that should have shown live feeds of crane operations displayed only error messages. Marcus, thank God. It was Davis, the shift supervisor. White guy, mid-50s, good man but scared of losing his pension. The whole system crashed. We've tried everything. Rebooting, manual override, backup generators. Nothing works. Marcus set down his backpack. He pulled out his laptop. When did it start? 4:30 this morning. Right in the middle of loading the Seoul Express. Davis wiped sweat from his forehead. There's $47 million in automotive parts sitting on that ship. If we don't move it by noon, the shipping company threatens breach of contract. And if that happens... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Marcus sat down. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled past. He navigated to the system core, found the automation protocols, traced the error logs. And there it was. A recursive loop buried in the safety override sequence. Elegant. Invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look. Because Marcus had put it there himself. 72 hours ago, while everyone slept, Marcus had remotely accessed the port's mainframe from his apartment. He'd written a single piece of code. A digital time bomb set to detonate at precisely 4:30 a.m. on this exact morning. The morning Baek Jinsang's shipment was scheduled to move. Marcus stared at the screen. His reflection looked back at him in the dark monitor glass. Behind him, Davis paced nervously. The other supervisor, a young woman named Chen, stood with her arms crossed, watching Marcus work. "Can you fix it?" Davis asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He typed another command. The system responded with cascading error messages. He let them fill the screen. "It's not a simple crash," Marcus said finally. His voice was calm, measured. "Someone inserted code into the safety protocol. A backdoor." Davis stopped pacing. "A backdoor? You mean someone hacked us?" "Yes." "Who would do that?" Marcus turned in his chair. He looked directly at Davis. "Someone who didn't want certain containers moved today." Chen stepped closer. "What containers?" Before Marcus could answer, the control room door slammed open. All 3 of them turned. Baek Jinsang stood in the doorway. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. His face was hard, angular. A vertical scar ran down his chin like a seam in stone. Behind him, 2 men in black jackets stood with their hands clasped in front of them. Security. Or something worse. Beck's eyes swept the room. They landed on Marcus. "You," Beck said. His accent was slight but present. "You're the engineer?" Marcus held his gaze. "I am." Beck walked forward. His shoes clicked against the concrete floor. He stopped 3 feet from Marcus's chair, close enough that Marcus could smell his cologne. Expensive, sharp. "I was told you're the best," Beck said. "I was told you built this system, that you know every piece of it." "That's correct." "Then why is my shipment still sitting on the dock?" The question hung in the air. Davis shifted uncomfortably. Chen looked down. Marcus didn't blink. "Because the system has been compromised." "Compromised." Beck repeated the word slowly. "By who?" "I don't know yet." Beck smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "You don't know. The man who built the system doesn't know who broke it." He turned to his security, said something in Korean. They laughed. Then Beck looked back at Marcus. The smile disappeared. "Let me explain something to you," Beck said quietly. Every hour those cranes don't move costs me money. Real money. The kind of money that makes people disappear when it goes missing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Marcus understood perfectly. I need those cranes operational by noon, Beck continued. If they're not, I will hold you personally responsible. And when I hold someone responsible, they learn very quickly what that means. He leaned down. His face was now level with Marcus's. Fix it, Beck whispered, or I'll find someone who can. And you can go back to whatever it is people like you do when they're not useful anymore. People like you. Marcus heard the words clearly. He understood the implication. He'd heard variations of it his whole life. In classrooms, in job interviews, in rooms where he was the only face that looked like his. People like you. Beck straightened up. He adjusted his cufflinks. Noon, he said again. Then he turned and walked out. His security followed. The door closed behind them. Silence filled the control room. Davis exhaled. Jesus Christ, Marcus. I'm sorry. I didn't know he was coming. It's fine, Marcus said. It's not fine. He can't talk to you like that. Marcus turned back to his computer. He just did. Chen sat down in the chair next to him. Can you really fix it by noon? Marcus looked at the screen, at the code he'd written, at the trap he'd set. Yes, he said, I can fix it. That was true. He could restore the system with a single command. Delete the recursive loop. Bring the cranes back online. Let Beck's shipment move exactly as planned. He could do that. But he wouldn't. Because at this very moment, something else was happening. Something Beck Jin-sung didn't know about. Something none of them knew about. When Marcus had inserted the code that crashed the crane system, he'd also programmed a second function. A delayed trigger. At exactly 6 a.m., 14 minutes ago, that trigger had activated. It had compiled every access log from the past 6 months, every container manifest, every modification to shipping records, every suspicious override of safety protocols, and it had packaged all of that data into encrypted files. Then it had sent those files to 3 email addresses: the FBI field office in Los Angeles, the investigative unit at the Los Angeles Times, and an Interpol task force specializing in international arms trafficking. The emails were time-stamped, verified, impossible to deny, and attached to each email was a simple message Marcus had written himself. Check container shipments controlled by Beck Jin-sung. Lives depend on it. Marcus had set all of this in motion 3 days ago. The crash, the chaos, the confrontation. All of it was designed to buy time. Time for those emails to be opened, read, acted upon. Time for the truth to spread too far to be stopped. Beck Jin-sung thought he was powerful. Thought his money and his threats made him untouchable. But Beck had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated the quiet man with the thick glasses and the worn backpack. The man he'd called people like you. Marcus typed steadily. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the rhythm of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Davis watched over his shoulder. Chen had gone downstairs to handle the growing crowd of frustrated dock workers and truck drivers. How long? Davis asked. Marcus didn't look up. Hard to say. The code is complex. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. That much was true. Marcus had known exactly what he was doing. On the screens, error messages continued to cascade. Red warnings, system failures, critical alerts. To anyone watching, it looked like Marcus was fighting against corrupted code, trying desperately to untangle a digital knot. In reality, he was stalling. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, he pulled it out. 3 text messages from an unknown number. The first, files received. The second, reviewing now. The third, Do not engage target. Repeat. Do not engage. Marcus deleted all 3 messages. He put the phone face down on the desk. Too late for that. Through the control room window, he could see Baek Jin-sung standing near Crane 7. The man was on his phone, pacing back and forth. His security detail formed a loose perimeter around him. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the tension in Baek's shoulders. $47 million sat frozen. Every minute that passed was money lost, contracts threatened, reputation damaged. But that wasn't what worried Baek. Not really. What worried him was the containers that couldn't be moved, the ones marked as agricultural equipment, the ones that needed to be on that ship before anyone looked too closely. Marcus watched him pace. He thought about his father again. James Whitfield had been a good man. Honest. Hard-working. He'd believed in the system. Believed that if you followed the rules and did your job and spoke up when something was wrong, people would listen. He died believing that. Marcus had spent 15 years learning the truth. The system didn't protect people like his father. It protected people like Baek Jin-sung. People with money, connections, power. So Marcus had stopped believing in the system, and he'd built his own. Marcus. Davis's voice pulled him back. I need to tell you something. Marcus looked up. Davis's face was pale. About 2 years ago, there was an incident. One of the containers came open during loading. Just fell apart. The contents spilled everywhere. I remember, Marcus said. He did. He'd been called in to review the crane operation logs, make sure the equipment wasn't at fault. What you don't know is what was inside that container. Davis lowered his voice. It wasn't machinery. It was rifles, military grade, maybe 200 of them. Marcus stayed quiet. The Port Authority shut it down fast, Davis continued. Real fast. Nobody filed reports. Nobody investigated. The whole thing just disappeared. And a week later, my supervisor retired. Early retirement. Very generous pension. You're saying someone paid him off. I'm saying people got the message. Don't ask questions. Don't look too close. And definitely don't cause problems. Davis sat down heavily. I've got 3 years until retirement, Marcus. I've got a daughter in college, a mortgage. I can't afford to make waves. I understand. Do you? Davis looked at him. Because if you're thinking about being a hero here, you need to know what you're up against. Baek Jin-sung doesn't just threaten people. He follows through. Marcus saved his work. Closed one window. Opened another. I'm not trying to be a hero, he said. That was true. Heroes got recognition. Parades. News coverage. Marcus didn't want any of that. He just wanted Baek Jin-sung to face the consequences that powerful men usually avoided. His phone buzzed again. This time he checked it immediately. A news alert from the Los Angeles Times. Breaking. Federal raid underway at Port of Los Angeles. Marcus felt his heartbeat quicken. He refreshed the page. The article was barely 3 sentences. No details yet. Just confirmation that FBI and Homeland Security vehicles had been spotted entering the port's restricted access area. He looked out the window. In the distance, beyond the rows of containers, he saw them. Black SUVs with government plates, marked police vehicles, men in tactical gear spreading out across the facility. They'd moved faster than he expected. Davis saw them too. Oh my God. What's happening? Marcus stood up. He walked to the window for a better view. Baek Jin-sung had seen them as well. He'd stopped pacing. His phone was pressed against his ear. His security detail had moved closer, forming a tighter circle around him. Then one of the federal agents pointed directly at Baek, and everything changed very quickly. Baek's security reached for their jackets. The federal agents drew weapons, shouted commands. Marcus couldn't hear the words through the glass, but he could see the choreography of confrontation. Hands up. Get down. On the ground. Baek Jin-sung stood frozen. For 3 seconds. 5 seconds. 10. Then slowly, with the careful movements of a man who understood he'd lost, he raised his hands. His security did the same. Agents swarmed forward. Beck was forced to his knees. Handcuffs snapped around his wrists, around his security team's wrists. Marcus watched it all happen. He felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. No sense of victory. Just the cold certainty that he'd done what needed to be done. Davis stood next to him now. Marcus, did you have something to do with this? Marcus didn't answer. On the dock below, federal agents were opening containers, photographing contents, marking evidence. More vehicles arrived. News helicopters appeared overhead. The port that never slept was about to wake up to a nightmare. And at the center of it all, being walked toward a waiting vehicle in handcuffs, was Baek Jin-sung, the man who'd called Marcus, "people like you." The man who thought power meant being untouchable. The man who'd made the fatal mistake of underestimating the quiet engineer with the worn backpack. Baek Jin-sung was pushed into the back of a federal vehicle. His head was down. His expensive suit was dusty from being forced to the ground. The door slammed shut. Through the tinted window, Marcus could barely see his silhouette. The man who had owned this port was now property of the federal government. Davis grabbed Marcus's shoulder. "You need to leave. Right now." "Why?" "Because when those agents finish processing Baek, they're going to come here. They're going to ask questions. And if they connect you to whatever triggered this investigation..." "Let them come," Marcus said. "Marcus, listen to me. These people don't care about right and wrong. They care about building cases. And if you're a loose end, I'm not a loose end." Marcus sat back down at his computer. "I'm a witness." He typed a final command. The screens flickered. One by one, the crane systems began their reboot sequence. Status lights changed from red to amber, amber to green. The port was coming back to life. Davis stared at the monitors. "How did you..." "The backdoor code was programmed to release after 8 hours, Marcus said calmly. "Automatic failsafe. Once the countdown expired, the system would restore itself." It was a lie. But it was a lie that would hold up under scrutiny. Davis didn't look convinced. "You planned this." Marcus met his eyes. "I fixed a corrupted system. That's what I do." Before Davis could respond, the control room door opened again. But this time it wasn't Baek Jin-sung. It was a woman in her mid-40s wearing an FBI windbreaker. Behind her, 2 more agents. Behind them, a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. The woman showed her badge. Special Agent Victoria Reeves, FBI Organized Crime Division. "Which one of you is Marcus Whitfield?" Marcus raised his hand slightly. "I am." "Mr. Whitfield, we need to ask you some questions." "Of course." "Starting with how you knew about the weapons shipments." Marcus had prepared for this moment. He'd rehearsed it in his mind dozens of times over the past 3 days. "I didn't know," he said. "Not until this morning." Agent Reeves stepped closer. "Explain." The system crash triggered a full diagnostic. Part of that diagnostic included reviewing access logs and manifest discrepancies. When I saw the pattern of irregularities tied to specific containers, all controlled by the same individual, I knew something was wrong. And you immediately contacted federal authorities. I programmed the system to compile the evidence and send it automatically if certain conditions were met. It's a whistleblower protocol I built into the security architecture 2 years ago. Another lie, but a believable one. The man in the suit stepped forward. "I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Mitchell Chang. Mr. Whitfield, you're saying you built an automated system that identifies criminal activity and reports it to law enforcement without human intervention?" "Yes." "That's remarkably convenient." Marcus didn't flinch. It's remarkably necessary. This port moves $40 billion in cargo annually. The potential for corruption is enormous. I designed safeguards. Chang and Reeves exchanged glances. We're going to need you to come with us, Reeves said. Full statement, technical documentation, everything. I understand. Marcus stood. He closed his laptop, picked up his backpack. As he walked past Davis, he said quietly, "The cranes are operational. You can resume normal operations." Davis just nodded. He looked like a man watching something he didn't fully understand, but knew had changed everything. The agents escorted Marcus down the metal stairs, out into the portyard, past clusters of confused dock workers, past news cameras that were starting to set up, past the spot where Baek Jin-song had stood less than an hour ago. They put him in an unmarked sedan. Not handcuffs, not under arrest, but not free either. The car drove through the port gates, past the federal vehicles, past the perimeter that was already being established, past the boundary between the world Marcus knew and whatever came next. In the back seat, Marcus looked out the window. Los Angeles scrolled by, the city his father had died in, the city that had ignored his father's warnings. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from the same unknown number. Well done. Marcus deleted it. Then he powered off the phone completely. 12 hours later, Marcus sat in a federal building in downtown Los Angeles. He'd given his statement, provided documentation, walked investigators through every technical detail of the port's automated systems. He'd told them exactly what they needed to hear. Nothing more, nothing less. Agent Reeves finally closed her folder. Mr. Whitfield, I want to be clear about something. What you did today may have prevented illegal weapons from reaching the street, but the way you did it raises serious questions. What questions? Whether you had prior knowledge, whether you acted alone, whether this was truly an automated response or a deliberate trap. Marcus kept his expression neutral. I've answered all your questions honestly. Have you? Yes. Chang leaned back in his chair. Here's what I think happened. I think you discovered evidence of criminal activity, and instead of reporting it through proper channels, you decided to handle it yourself. You crashed the port systems. You created chaos. You forced a confrontation. Marcus said nothing. The problem, Chang continued, is that we can't prove it. Your technical explanations hold up. Your automated protocols exist in the code. And frankly, we have bigger targets than a port engineer with a conscience. Reeves nodded. Baek Jin-song is connected to arms trafficking operations in 6 countries. His arrest has already led to 3 more warrants. Whatever your methods, Mr. Whitfield, the result is significant. She stood, handed him a business card. If we need additional testimony, we'll call you. Until then, you're free to go. Marcus took the card. That's it? That's it. She opened the door. For now. Marcus walked out of the federal building at 9:30 p.m. The city was dark. Traffic hummed in the distance. Somewhere a siren wailed. He took the metro back to Long Beach, walked 3 blocks to his apartment, climbed 2 flights of stairs. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it. His coffee cup from 3 days ago, his father's photograph on the bookshelf, his second laptop, the one the FBI didn't know about, sitting closed on the kitchen table. Marcus sat down, opened the laptop, entered his password. He navigated to a hidden folder. Inside were copies of everything. Every file. Every communication. Every piece of evidence he'd compiled. Insurance. Just in case the system tried to bury this the way it had buried his father's death. But he didn't think it would. Not this time. The story was too big, too public, too many people watching. Baek Jin-song would face trial. The weapons trafficking network would be dismantled. And maybe, just maybe, the port would be cleaner for it. Marcus closed the laptop. He walked to the window, looked out at the city. His father had believed in doing the right thing, in trusting the system, in speaking truth to power. Marcus had learned a different lesson. Sometimes the system needed help. Sometimes truth needed a push. Sometimes power only listened when it had no other choice. 3 days ago, a man in an expensive suit had looked at Marcus and seen nothing. Just another employee, another cog, another person to dismiss and threaten and forget. That man was now in federal custody facing 40 years in prison. And Marcus Whitfield, the quiet engineer with the worn backpack and the thick glasses, was free. Free to go back to work tomorrow. Free to maintain the systems that kept the port running. Free to watch. To listen. To wait. Because men like Baek Jinsang were never alone. There were always others. Always another scheme. Another corruption. Another injustice. And Marcus would be ready. Not as a hero. Not as a vigilante. Just as a man who understood that the most powerful weapon wasn't money or violence or threats. It was knowledge. And the patience to use it when the moment was right. Marcus turned away from the window, made himself tea, sat down with a book about automated control systems. Tomorrow the port would call, ask him to come back, fix whatever still needed fixing, and he would go, because that's what people like him did. They showed up. They did the work. They stayed invisible, until the moment they decided not to be. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look? Dismissed by someone who saw your appearance before they saw your abilities? Have you ever held the power to expose corruption, but struggled with whether to trust broken systems or take matters into your own hands? Tell us about your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about justice, dignity, and the quiet strength it takes to stand against overwhelming power, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.